Welcome in, all new betting preview for this week's 3M Open. I'm Rick Gaiman, that right there, Andy Lack, and Andy, we roll on. Are you hungover at all from a major championship season, or are you ready to rock and roll?
Yeah, it's always bittersweet. I think we're at like 258 days until the Masters, but who's counting? There's some intrigue on these final couple weeks of the season. Some Ryder Cup implications at play this week in Minnesota. Some FedEx Cup implications at play as well. Some stars that are looking to get back on the horse. Some young, unproven guys. So there's enough meat on that bone for us to chew on.
Yeah, Justin Thomas working very hard to get himself into the playoffs, is playing this week, has committed to the Wyndham Championship, though I imagine if he does win this week, he will not play the Wyndham. But there's this flurry to get into the FedEx Cup playoffs because it's only 70 at the first stop this year. And Andy, it's a pretty top heavy field. We've got guys from the Open Championship coming back over, some guys who spent both weeks overseas, and now they're back at the 3M trying to make things happen. So the top of the board, which is, if you're watching on YouTube from Odds Checker, it's a grid where you can shop the odds across the industry. Cam Young, Sung J M, Tony Finau, the three-headed co-favorites, according to Odds Checker. Then you get Hideki at 18-1. That's the top tier.
I think I want to start by saying I have a tremendous amount of respect for what Cameron Young did at the Open Championship from a ball striking standpoint. Usually we're talking about Rory McIlroy or Scotty Scheffler as the guy where if their putter even just cooperated a tiny bit, they would be the one holding the trophy. At the Open Championship last week, that guy was Cameron Young. If he was the only guy in the top 10 to lose strokes putting, he lost about 5 of them as well. And he lapped the field from tee to green. And this golf course, similar in a lot of respects to Royal Liverpool in the sense that there's a lot of trouble off the tee on this golf course. As water comes into play in 15 holes. And Cam Young is not the most accurate driver of the ball, but he showed a lot of restraint off the tee at Liverpool. He hit a lot of driving irons. He hit a lot of low stingers. Probably not going to need that kind of low shot at TPC Twin Cities. But if he's able to show that same sort of restraint where he doesn't feel the need to pull driver on every single hole, I think his path to success at this golf course is pretty wide based on the way that he's hitting the ball right now.
Yeah. So they're 5,000 miles apart and completely different. But the idea, I like that. I thought that same thing, right? The idea of stay away from the trouble off the tee. That is step one. There are going to be a ton of water balls this week, not only on tee shots, but on second shots. So removing yourself from potential disaster, last week, pot bunkers, this week, water, is still pretty strategic. We'll just get to this real quick because Jason already brings it up. The idea around guys that played last week in the UK maybe had a long, grueling week, wet, nasty, heavy-footed conditions because you're sopping around water in your shoes all week long, in contention. If this was any other sport, this would be like a letdown spot.
Listen, is it realistic for Cam Young to gain 16 strokes ball striking again? Maybe not. Is it also realistic for him to lose 5 strokes putting again? Maybe not as well. I want to get your opinion on this too, but Tony Finau won this event last year after playing over the weekend at the Open Championship. At the highest level, a lot of these guys are flying privately anyway. Do you put a ton of stock into the whole jet lag idea?
Do not care at all.
Yeah.
I just, first off, these guys, it's also not like you and I. These guys fly 25 weeks a year. They know how to adjust time zones. They know when to eat, when to sleep. They've got this figured out. If I were to do this trip, I'd be in the fetal position in the corner for the first couple of days, of the tournament. I'd be cooked. This is when people say, oh, these guys are professionals, they are professionals and they deal with this literally every single week.
Totally agree. And I would also say that I think for us fans, it's easy for us to have a little bit of an exhale. A lot of these guys in this field, Cameron Young, Tony Finau, obviously Justin Thomas, there's still a lot on the line for them this week as it pertains to the Ryder Cup. I don't think Cam Young's spot is safe on that team. I don't think Finau's spot is safe on that team. Don't think Justin Thomas's, for that matter, is either. And as much as we as fans kind of poo-poo the FedEx Cup and downplay it, it's life-changing money. I mean, that's just the reality of the situation for these guys. And if you're a guy like Justin Thomas who's on the outside looking in, or even if you're looking based on the way that the point structure and playoff structure is this year with one less playoff event, you really want to position yourself in that top 5 and top 10 heading into the playoffs and heading into that season finale at the Tour Championship. So I think for the top guys, like I see motivation for pretty much every single one of these guys to turn in a strong performance in Minnesota this week. I don't think this is really a letdown spot for anyone.
Did you bet any of these guys?
I bet a 22 on Sung Jae.
Okay.
I see him down to 16 with, I certainly like a lot less. I was deciding between Cam Young and Sung Jae. We already covered Cam Young a bit. The 14s on Cam versus the 22s on Sung Jae were enough for me to give the edge to Sung Jae. Listen, I talked about this a lot in the written preview that I did for Rick Run Good. This is a Florida golf course randomly plopped in the middle of Minnesota.
Yeah.
Right. Like we've heard Michael Thompson compare this golf course to PGA National.
He's won at both, right?
And he's won at both. There's a lot of crossover.
There. Yeah.
Sung Jae's won at both. Yeah. Sung Jae 2nd and 15th at the 3M, also a win at PGA National. There's even a little Sawgrass here with a big connection there with Sung Jae finishing. I think Sung Jae was top 6 at the Players this year, if I'm not mistaken as well. You may want to fact check me on that. Yeah. Yes, there you go. So this type of golf course where it's very water intensive and the nature and character of the course is avoiding landmines at all costs. Those are the types of events that Sung Jae thrives. He is an incredibly, incredibly accurate driver of the golf ball. And I think that should serve him really well this week.
Yeah. Sung Jae is actually who I wrote up for our Golf Digest column that we do. I picked Sung Jae. I think that'll come out probably later today. Spoiler alert. Sung Jae is my pick. So yes, that's,
I did too.
I'm kind of on a similar boat to you there. The next tier is probably where a lot of people are going to want to get exposure to, Emiliano Grillo, who had a great week last week, Sepp Straka, who's been on fire. Both of those guys, 25-1. You inject, Ludwig Aberg in here at 30. You've also got Justin Thomas, where this price has been kind of bouncing around the last couple of weeks. I think that this will be a popular range for people to make lineups, for people to fire bets at. How do you start breaking down this area of the board?
Well, there are a couple guys I really like in this range. I guess I'll start with Hadwin, who's another fairly obvious course history choice. If you just look at what he's done on this golf course, he's got a 4th and a 6th, I believe.
And a 38th. He's never missed a cut here.
Yep. Never missed a cut. And he's been playing some great golf this year. I mean, he lost in a playoff at the Rocket Mortgage, had a really close call there. That's another bent grass golf course where you need to kind of go out and get it a little bit and score. I just thought the number was fair on him. This felt like a guy to me that they would have snuck into the low 30s, and I was able to get him as high as 50. I don't know if any of those 50s are available. I would have happily bet him in the 40s as well, and I think those are still available. So I'd probably start with Hadwin as my favorite guy in this range.
Let's just do the Justin Thomas thing real quick. 28-1. This is the cut last week at the Open. That is now 4 missed cuts in his last 6 starts. He adds this event because he needs it. I don't know about you, Andy, but desperation is not necessarily one of the key factors I love in guys that I back. What do you see when you look at JT trying to tee it up this week, the 3-0?
Listen, I like that he's here. I don't know if he's here on his own volition. Maybe Zach Johnson said, "You got to go to Minnesota, pal." He was a late entrant to the field.
Maybe his wife said, "Hey, there's a lot of money in the FedEx Cup. I need you in there." That's what I would say. If I,
right.
Get going, bud. You can't be a top player in the world, have an entirely healthy season and miss the playoffs.
right? I'm all for the argument of let's take our chances on pedigree when the number fits the pedigree. And I have been asked by a couple people this week, and I'm curious to get your thought what your buy number is on JT this week. So what number he would have to be in the outright market for you to pounce on him. My answer was 40.
I was going to say 50.
Your answer is 50. Reasonable, honestly. I think 25 is still asinine for his form. I mean, all the guys in the 40s are objectively playing better golf than him right now.
I'm going to be early on JT, but I need like an ounce of life. I need like something. I need go gain 5 strokes on approach. Go look like you're not miserable. Like go do anything. Do anything for me. Play 36 holes well. And then I'll be involved. But this is just, I think he's kind of lost, man. I think the putter's always been an issue. The rest of his game hasn't been sharp. I also think that there's a lot of, and this is very much narrative, but there's a lot of shit that can set you off here. Right. I mean, like when he hits 1 or 2 in the water and he's already like we've seen guys, no one is immune to this. No one is immune to the ejection around TPC Twin Cities. We see it all the time with some of the big name players. I think there are just landmines everywhere.
Yes, and I think the one pushback I would have to that is I think he's the only player in the field that's won both the Honda and the Players. But at the same time, I don't know if this is the golf course that you go to find format, right? I mean, like, yes, it's easy to say that he's done well on these water-intensive golf courses with landmines everywhere. He also did well on those golf courses because at the time he was a top 5 player in the world, right? And if you're not a top 5 player in the world, you know, you're probably going to be faced with a lot more challenging shots that could create a little bit more of mental unease when you're standing over the ball on the tee. So I'm with you. I think this is an entirely different conversation. And I talked about this on a recent Ryder Cup podcast I did. To me, this is an entirely different discussion if he finishes like T34 at the Open, right? Like I'm basically just asking you to not shoot 81. And we're probably talking about this guy a little bit differently, but I'm with you. Beat me a little bit first, or even finish T45 this week, but gain 2 or 3 on approach, and maybe I'll feel better about you at the Wyndham.
The next tier offers guys like JT Poston, who have been pretty hot. Lucas Glover, who's, you know, we haven't seen him in a couple weeks, but he's going to be popular in DFS markets. Austin Eckroat, another guy who I think has been kind of the belle of the ball of the last month or so. There's a lot of really good options here. And this is kind of where I've started to live, right? You know, it'll be Sung Jae, and then I'll probably jump down here and find like maybe an Eckroat bet, probably a Mark Hubbard bet at 60 or 66, something that I can find in that realm. Like, what are we doing down here?
Okay, this is a quick like programming note / question. I was perusing through RickRunGood yesterday, and I was stumbling on upon a couple player profiles.
Okay.
How good on a scale of 1 to 10 are we feeling about our Barracuda ball striking numbers? Because we have them, but they're not. I don't think they're on any other data website.
So it's the official numbers from the PGA Tour.
Okay.
They, however, and I've emailed them about this.
No short game.
No around the green.
Yeah.
Which doesn't, I've never seen that before. I don't know why they were omitted. I'll have to check to see if they are going to go back and rectify. So I'm waiting to hear whether the number that should be around the green, like, was that lumped into approach? Was that taken away from, you know what I mean? Like,
it could be with Patrick Rogers and the other guy I'm about to mention, but yeah, take a quick peek over to JJ Spawn for a second, who, you know, will trust the quote unquote crooked PGA Tour on this one, but
yeah, 13, I mean, listen, even if you split it, right? Even if you say he gained 7 around the green
and 6 on approach. Yeah.
6 on approach. So yeah, it is, you know, that's a very strange event with the way that they do the data, but they did not send over any around the group. So I think there is a little bit of like, I don't know. I'm not like acting like they are set in stone or anything like that, but I think that they're pretty close.
don't take anything from the Barracuda Championship as gospel. I think that's a healthy rule to
In
live
general.
by.
Yeah, in
Just
general.
just in life in general. What happens in Tahoe stays in Tahoe. But
Yeah.
with that being said, JJ Spawn does have my interest. I'm a big Austin Eckroat guy as well. Forgive me for repeating myself 800 times on this point, but there's that nice little Matthew Wolf Oak Tree National TPC Twin Cities connection. Oak Tree National is this peat dye design with bent grass greens and water on maybe every single hole. So it's not the biggest shock in the world that Matthew Wolf and Austin Eckroat that Matthew Wolf won this tournament, and Austin Eckroat, who also is a member at Oak Tree National in Oklahoma and Matthew Wolf's practice partner there, might have some success here as well.
I will probably have like kind of a big card this week, which is, I've kept very small cards the last month or two, but I'll take a lot of chaos this week. Vincent Norman, who just won a couple of weeks ago, cut from the same cloth as Cam Champ. Cam Champ is actually like kind of playing better. Garrick Higo, if we care about driving the ball, like I'm happy to load up on the 70, 80, 100 to 1 and just kind of take my chances for this week.
Yeah, absolutely. There's some names down here that I'm a fan of as well. Adam Svensson being one of them. He, if we want to do the whole, I think having Cameron Champ and Matthew Wolf win here and Tony Finau to a certain extent, maybe threw a bunch of people off the scent that this is more of an accuracy than a distance golf course. Those guys, those really big bombers, won here because they had insane approach and putting weeks. I really believe that this is more of a golf course where the main objective is to keep the ball and play off the tee. Adam Svensson was a guy that had PGA National in his absolute hands, was one of the best ball strikers in the field there, kind of gave it up a little bit on Sunday, but has, been a really, really accurate driver of the ball over the last year and has shown that he can get it done. And really a field that's not too dissimilar from this over the fall swing at the RSM Classic. So I bet Svensson at 110 to 1. I think he's down to the 75s and 80s now, which I like a little bit less, but I'm still a fan of.
As far as the matchup market goes, is there anybody we can pick on? Sung J M and Tony Finau are even money. We both obviously like Sung Jae. Finau, the defending champion and has played phenomenal here, is in the midst of a slump. So I kind of point out that one. But is there anybody else that might not be right for an outright wager, but you're looking at in some of these alternative markets?
I'm a huge Sahith fan. I'm happy to pick on him right now. I just don't love what I've seen from him out of the past couple months. Yeah. And you get a guy in Aaron Rai who is bar none such an incredibly accurate driver of the golf ball on this golf course, where I know that there's one thing I can count on in Aaron Rai, and that's him keeping the ball in play off the tee and with the water hazards. Maybe Sahith's able to show some restraint off the tee and hit like a driving iron. Hopefully that would be the game plan I would tell him to do if I was advising him. But, his driver is one of the least accurate in this field right now. And so I feel a lot safer with Aaron Rai on this golf course than I would with Sahith.
Yeah, completely agree. He's always inaccurate. And now, so he had like the longest made cut streak, and now he's missed like 2 in a row. And I just think things
That's how it always goes. Yeah.
Kind of spinning pretty quickly here. I'm just scrolling through a couple of other ones. I mentioned Hubbard for me, which was kind of surprising. He popped in so many different models, right?
Me too.
Like recent form, he's played well around here. He keeps it in play off the tee. Like he's been pretty darn good. So, we'll see what his ownership ends up being if I run him out in DFS formats, but I will certainly have exposure to him. Like I said, outright market, probably here. The top 10 numbers is probably going to be good enough because I think he's like 60 to 1 or 66 to 1. So there's a couple other ways I can deploy him, but he's been way better than I think people realize he's been.
I agree. And it's an interesting matchup that you have here with kind of two players on opposite ends of the spectrum in terms of what they do well. Fox is really inaccurate off the tee, but bombs the ball. Hubbard is one of the shortest players on tour, but really accurate off the tee. I'd be looking to capitalize on this one because I don't know if we are in the majority here with really thinking that accuracy at this golf course is more important than distance. I've seen a lot of bomber talk a la, Cameron Champ and Matthew Wolf. So I think this is a good opportunity to capitalize if you feel pretty strongly about a course projection that maybe the market or some of the other conventional wisdom might not totally be on board with.
I think it is a little deceiving because when you think of winners, Finau, Champ, Wolf, but like when I run my regression model for every stat, it looks at everybody in the field. So it it looks at 2 through 10, 2 through 156, whatever. And it kind of like hated driving distance. And it loves driving accuracy.
100%. And that's just, it gives credence to understanding that the guy who wins usually has an outlier spike performance in something. Maybe often it's the putter.
Yeah.
Usually it's the irons, but that never tells the whole story of the tournament. I actually talked about this on the podcast that I just did with our friend Joseph Lamagna recapping the Open Championship, where it's like you look at the last 7 winners of the Open and it's like Colin Morikawa, Cameron Smith, Brian Harmon, Francesco Molinari, Henrik Stenson, Zach Johnson. None of those guys are longer hitters, but you just swap 1 stroke here, 1 stroke there, and the list of Open Championship winners are like Phil Mickelson, Cameron Young, Rory McIlroy. So it's never the winner that just tells the whole story. And I think that might be a little bit misleading this week at the 3M.
Yeah, if you only modeled on winners, you would think that strokes gained putting is the most important stat ever.
Yeah.
And Lucas Herbert would be your number 1 guy in the model every single week because whatever. All right. We are going to continue this conversation. We got to talk about one and done. I want to pick Andy's brain on something that he doesn't know about yet, but we are going to take a quick break and see you on the other side.
Andy Lack is one of the nerdiest golf guys that I know, and I mean that as an absolute compliment. His knowledge of course architecture allows him to create some of the most actionable course previews available, and he offers up pure expertise on his own podcast, the Inside Golf Podcast. Twice a week, he offers course breakdowns, DFS, and betting strategy for every PGA Tour event, and he expands the universe by bringing on entertaining and knowledgeable guests who can offer a different viewpoint of the game that we love. Follow Inside Golf Pod on Twitter and download Inside Golf wherever you download podcasts.
And we're back. Okay, Andy, long story short here. So, we use Office Football Pool I've used it for one and dones, and we referenced the ownership there, which we're going to do in a couple minutes. They got bought. Them and Run Your Pool got bought by Splash Sports, which my hope is that we can run our one and done on there next year, and they have these pick'em contests every week. So I've just been messing around, throwing these contests up for people to get into. They're like listener leagues, private contests where it's just pick'em, and I want to go. Let's make a lineup together.
I'm not familiar with Splash Sports. Are you? Are they a big player in the the one and done streets?
Well, they now own Office Football Pool and Run Your Pool, so they now own like the 2 biggest sites out there. So it's like backed by like Robert Kraft. They have like a bunch of like
private equity money or something.
Yeah.
Huh. Interesting. Okay. Well, what's the game here?
Yeah. So here it is. It is just score to par. So Finau, Young, Thomas, Sungjae, or Hideki.
We should go Sungjae to keep honest with our picks, I think.
I think that makes sense. Tier 2, Sahith, Fox, Woodland, Rye, or Jaeger.
I could be talked into any of the 3 outside of Fox and Sahith. Do you have any strong feelings between
I think
the remaining 3?
I think it's Rye. I think Rye's
okay.
Just
I can get down with that for sure.
Yeah. Tier 3, Grillo, Poston, Hadwin, Eric Cole, Mark Hubbard.
I would go Hadwin.
Okay.
But I don't hate Grillo either. We talked about how much we like Hubbard, but I think Hubbard's still in a lower tier right now than Hadwin and Grillo.
I mean, even if you think about this, like Hubbard's 60-1, Hadwin's like what 28-1 or something like that. So
yeah. Let's go Hadwin.
Let's go Hadwin. Straka, Norin, Spawn, Rogers, Aberg.
Well, I think if you're just playing the odds game, in terms of what these players' true value is, you probably have to go Straka or Ludwig, right?
I agree. Do you trust Straka? So Straka, so he's off a win and a runner-up.
Yeah.
But I have like zero trust in him. Maybe I should. That might be a blind spot. Maybe I should. I mean, he hits a lot of fairways. He's accurate off the tee. He's not super long.
Won the Honda Classic.
Let's do Straka.
Let's do Straka.
Yeah, I think that's right. Last one. Davis, Eckroat, Nikolai Højgaard, Lee Hodges, Bo Hostler.
I would go Eckroat, but
right.
I could also be talked into, if you're feeling the Nikolai Ryder Cup push, I could be talked into that as well.
All right. I lied. One more. There's 6 players. Mitchell, Reevey, Bezadenhout, Griffin, or Vincent Norman.
Who, I really like Ches this week as a DraftKings play. I know you're a little bit higher on Norman.
Yeah.
I'm cool with either if you have a strong opinion here.
Let's try Norman. All right,
okay.
So that's who we're going to go. All right. So that contest is live. There's a link in the description. You can join, one of my lineups. So you can try to beat that, but it's $15, 3-entry max. And we'll see. I'm hoping that we can see the software. Hopefully it works well for one and done. And then we can kind of have everything in one spot, which would be the hope. But Office Football Pool. So as you can see, Andy is now part of the Splash family. Here is the one and done ownership projections for this week. 25% Sepp Straka, 14% Emiliano Grillo, 12% Cam Young. Those are the 3 guys over 12%.
Gosh, the Sepp Straka, even that is still alarming to me. I would imagine that at this point in the season, it's slim pickings. I think that if you have Hideki or Sungjae available to you, those are solid options. Even, let me ask you this question. Who do you have more faith in this week, JT or Finau? It's got to be Finau still, right?
It has to be. I mean, he's played beautifully here. The only thing, Finau's deficiency, the putter's been horrible and he's been average on approach. JT's kind of all over the place. Like most weeks it's the bad putter. Some weeks he can't drive. That it feels like he's got a lot more holes to plug. I would go Finau, but I agree with you. Like if you have Hideki available, I'm running out Hideki. I would love to run out Hideki in most spots. But for us, I don't have him available and I don't have him available in a lot of one and dones.
How far would you go, I guess, is my question. You know what's surprising to me? I thought that Ludwig would be higher.
The problem
will have Ludwig, but it seems like he's at 3%.
The problem is, sometimes you get weeks like this, and it's like, how low are you going to go? And it's like, okay, well, I'll go down to the board to Grillo and Straka, but they're super popular, which makes it a lot harder to do. So I think you don't have to go further than Hadwin.
I agree. I wouldn't go further than Hadwin. There's a less than 0% chance that you don't have one of Hadwin, Straka, Ludwig. We didn't talk about Grillo either, who I kind of feel pretty good about this week too. Yeah. But I wouldn't go past any of those guys. I don't think there's any need.
For our one and done, last week, I had Cam Smith, the defending champion, $84,000. You had Brooks Koepka, $39,000. So $16.5 million in the purse. We barely broke 6 figures.
Wow. Yeah. Brooks, gosh, who was a bigger disappointment to you this week? Was it Brooks, Cam? Maybe throw DJ into that as well, who's been really disappointing for me this season. I
think it was DJ.
Yeah, probably DJ, right?
I did not think Cam was a good fit for Hoylake.
But it was a defensible one and done selection based on the options.
Of course. Yeah. Listen, especially because you kind of I thought you kind of have to use a live guy in most situations. And yeah, that's the pick. It's whatever. It's fine. But I think that the DJ, who played so well at LACC, and then I thought it was a really good spot for him. And for him to just absolute eject was pretty disappointing.
I would agree. I think that I thought that he would have made a bigger statement this year in the majors. Because I still was kind of under the mindset that he had something left in the tank, and maybe he does going forward, but he kind of fell flat based on my expectations. So, we're not going to get to see him hit a relevant golf shot for 260 days. So, you never know. But anyway, this week, pretty much no blood. And I don't have to win out, but I have to beat you out by a significant margin, I would assume, right?
Well, you do, and you will have to battle Emiliano Grillo this week.
That was my pick. Darn it. All right. I have to go rogue.
The riches of being in front allow me to steal the chalk. Although I'll tell you what, we are in the midst of an absolute pillow fight. In the last 8 weeks, I've gotten $700,000. And you did a little bit better because you had Ricky at the Rocket Mortgage, but we are literally just,
Yeah. I'll go Hadwin.
Adam Hadwin. Okay. Adam Hadwin, Emiliano Grillo. Definitely the 3M Open. All right. Hey, listen, penultimate regular season event, Andy, and then we will be in the playoffs.
We certainly will. Potentially the last FedEx Cup playoffs, presented by FedEx and not Aramco. Who can say going forward? But yeah, I mean, we still got some good golf down the stretch. Ryder Cup starting to heat up a little bit. It's so funny the way that it's the golf world. It feels like it's starting to shift, where the major weeks have never felt more impactful. Everything else has never felt less impactful. And now the Ryder Cup news cycle is like the NFL offseason. It's like, if you're not talking about the Ryder Cup in March, then you don't understand content. So excited to dive into all of that stuff a little bit further going forward with you.
All right. Follow Andy on Twitter at ADP Lack Sports. You can find me at RickRunGood. This has been your betting preview for this week's 3M. Good luck.